In 1545, Catholic leaders traveled to the city of Trent. Over a period of 18 years, the Council of Trent grappled with some of the most critical issues the Roman Catholic Church had ever faced.
The first real substantial issue that the Council dealt with was what we might call the issue of authority, that is to say, the role of Scripture and then the role of church traditions.
The Council of Trent resolved that the authority of the Church rested on twin pillars, not on Scripture alone, but on Scripture and something that the Council called tradition, the ongoing authority that descended, the faith that came from the apostles, that acted as a twin pillar alongside Scripture to sustain the teaching authority of the Catholic Church.
The Decree of Trent on this issue of authority begins by saying that the faith of the Church and practice of the Church is based upon the teaching and preaching of Christ and the apostles, as this has come down to us in two ways: in the written tradition, that is to say, in the written scriptures, and then in the unwritten traditions that go back to the time of the apostles.
The Catholic understanding was that Christ himself established the structure of the church, focused on the bishops, so that when bishops faced a dispute over the interpretation of Scripture, they couldn't just make up their minds as they pleased, but they had to take into account the decisions of preceding centuries of bishops and councils deciding questions. That was the tradition. Tradition then becomes a lens through which the bishops decide an interpretation of Scripture.
Here was a fundamental position that still separates the Church of Rome from most of the Protestant world. By confirming the authority of unwritten tradition, the bishops at the council validated many non-biblical teachings and customs.
In this decree, the council does not list any of them, but we know from the discussions that issues that were on the minds of the bishops were, for instance, infant baptism. Where do you find that in the Bible? And yet that's an established Christian practice. The teaching of the creed that Christ descended into hell, not so clear where we can find that in the New Testament. What about Sunday observance? That doesn't seem to be in the New Testament.